Hey, it's Rika. And on this week's episode of the Deliberate Leader podcast, we are talking about performance. It is part of the holy trinity of being a deliberate leader. And it doesn't matter whether you're religious or not, right? But there's three key things that you need to know: energy, performance, and relationships. We've already covered energy and relationships. Today, we're covering performance. And we're delving into everything that you need to know in order to manage performance well, right? And really do it deliberately. So I want to give you 5 key aspects for you to be thinking about as you are managing performance. And I'd love you to really think about it in the context of energy, relationships, and of course, performance. The 3 key things that you need to be a great deliberate leader. Enjoy. Hi there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Deliberate Leader podcast. This week, we're going to be focusing in on performance. Now, if you've been tuning in over the last few weeks, we've been looking at the deliberate leader from 3 critical aspects, and the third we're covering today. The first one is our energy. So what energy are we turning up with? How do we maintain our energy? Thinking about things that also zap our energy. In the second of these 3-part series, we looked at our relationships. And so, who are we needing to form and maintain those relationships with? And how do we do that in a way which honors their style, but also honors our own working style? And today's installment is the final one, and we're going to be looking at performance. So if you think about energy, performance, and relationships, they really make up the holy trinity, if you like, of deliberate leadership. And the philosophy behind the deliberate leader is that when you have those 3 in harmony, all working together with you, with your hands on the steering wheel, kind of driving all 3 of those elements of your leadership, then leadership is more fulfilling. You don't have to work as hard to be a great leader, as long as you've got those 3 things in place. So energy, relationships, and performance, which we're covering today. So if we think about performance, the term performance management is not one that lands well, actually, for many, many people, because when we think about that, we think about managing performance and performance management, which equals getting into trouble, receiving feedback that maybe was negative, being told off, having the difficult conversations, awkward conversations, all of that. And today is not really about that. Today is about ensuring that we are on top of performance and we're thinking about it in a really sustainable way. Consistent, sustainable way is what I should have said. I think I just made up a new word. Rather than using strategies for performance management when we need to manage trickier times or when we've got underperformance. By focusing in on the things that we're going to be talking about today, like connection, empathy, good quality goal setting, capability development, feedback, and decision making, then we can ensure that we've got this very sustainable and consistent approach to how we're managing performance in our teams. You know this, right? But I'm going to state the bleeding obvious. We're not just managing performance when it comes to mid-year and end-of-year appraisal time. Now, at the time of recording this, today is the 30th of June, and where I am, it's the end of the Australian financial year. So with that, I have a lot of my clients that have been preparing at the moment and telling me they're preparing for their end-of-year appraisal, they're preparing for mid-year appraisals. So some of them run on a calendar year performance year, so January through to December. Some of them are running on an end of financial year for appraisals. Doesn't matter whatever your time frame is, right? And I'm aware that some run April through to March and all sorts of things to align maybe with wherever their parent company is headquartered. The point, though, is that if we're leaving performance management to those more formal times where we formally evaluate performance, because those results then feed into the result machine and it pumps out, half-yearly results and annual results and all that kind of stuff, which I acknowledge we need to do. But if we're only doing that, do you know what that would be like? It would be like being in a long-term intimate relationship and only celebrating your partner and only celebrating that you're in a relationship on anniversaries and maybe Christmas. Like, we don't do that. Surely we don't do that. Please tell me that you don't do that, right? We're celebrating each other every day. And that is, we're saying thank you, and we're being lovely, and we're offering each other a cup of coffee and a cup of tea. And maybe we're organizing date night like once a month. And maybe we're going on a walk. We're doing all that stuff, right? And I know I'm taking this into kind of romantic land, and I don't mean to, but to really highlight the fact that when you're in a relationship, you're not doing things, and hopefully you're not. And if you are, then you need to tune into a different podcast, not this one. But you don't want to only be doing those things on occasions. You want to be doing those things every day because you want to demonstrate to your partner that you love them every day, right? Not just on special occasions. So it is no different in the leader team relationship, right? In the workplace relationship, it is really no different. If we are only going to formally recognize performance, or worse still, give negative feedback when it's performance appraisal time, then that's not, number one, it's not leadership. And number two, that is not, an employment relationship. You will not get the best out of that person at all. You're not going to be motivating them. You're not going to be leveraging their strengths, because you're only highlighting and noticing things when an artificial time on a calendar tells you that you need to do that. Okay. So that is where we're starting from today. We need to be doing it all the time. So we're not just managing in the good times, and we're not just managing in the bad times. We are managing all the time. And if you don't like the term management, then sub it in for leadership, right? We could get into semantics about management leadership. That's not going to happen on this podcast either, because at the end of the day, we lead. We also need to manage, right? That's the way it goes. I don't know of any roles that kind of can properly delineate the operational and the strategic side of management and leadership. So we're managing in good times, and we're managing in not so good times. That is the premise for today. Okay, so let's start with connection. Now, if we do, as I had explained in this earlier part, that we're not just managing when there's artificial dates on the calendar, and we're connecting with our people all the time, then there are certain things that can help us to maintain that connection, maybe establish that connection. If the person is new in your team, or if you're not doing, if you don't feel that you've been connecting in with them as often, perhaps as what you could and should, and we're not going to could, should, and would all over ourselves, but, sometimes it is, as you're listening to this, you might be reflecting about how you could do that maybe differently. So when we're looking at connection, we're going to look at the quality of our connection. Now, if I am on a phone call with someone, I can still hear them if I've got a bit of a crackle or a bit of a, disrupted line, but my experience in hearing them and really being able to tune in is going to be impacted, because I don't have that clarity of a beautiful kind of clear line where I can hear them. In connection with our people, we're looking for a crisp, good quality connection, not a crackly one. And so we don't want a distorted connection. We don't want a connection where we're talking to them every day for a week and then we ignore them for a month, or they ignore us, right? We want good quality, sustainable connection. Now, that quality of connection, the first thing that's going to depend upon is how much time are you spending with each other? And when you are spending that time together, what does the quality of that time look like? So the place you're going to want to go to really think about your connection is your one-on-ones. Are you having one-on-ones? Are you having these one-on-ones regularly? Best practice, and this is from research, believe it or not, someone did a piece of research on this in 2022, published in the Harvard Business Review. Steve Rosenberg did this research, and what he found, surveyed about a couple of thousand people, and surprise, surprise, best practice is that we are having one-on-one meetings weekly for about 30 minutes. Now, if you've stopped walking or stopped driving or doing whatever you're doing, please don't. Keep doing what you're doing. I don't mean to kind of go newsflash. That should not be a surprise to you, right? 30 minutes every week. It will annoy those of you that have big teams. And so those of you that have, 8, 10 or more, because there are teams with leaders with more than that, you're going to be going, where do I find 30 minutes to spend with each of my people? I can't do it, Rita. And that's okay. Break the rules, right? It can be 15 minutes. Try not to go any lower than 15 minutes. But when you're getting into 45-minute, 1 hour territory every week, I'd be going too much. And here's a formula that will keep you to 30 minutes and less. Highlights, lowlights, insights. Hey, Jay's in my team. I hope she doesn't mind that I'm using her name on this podcast. Hey, Jay, what are the things you're really proud about this week? Highlights. Hey, Jay, what are the things that didn't go so well this week? Lowlights. Hey, Jay, what did you learn from all of that? Insights. If you are spending roughly kind of 8 to 10 minutes, let's even say 7 to 8 minutes, because you're going to want to do a bit of a catch up, how you're going, and then a bit of a wind up at the end. If you're spending 7 to 8 minutes on each of those, say 21 to 24 minutes to be precise, of a 30-minute catch up, then I reckon you are doing really, really well. Highlights, lowlights, insights. Now, you don't need to use that as your formula, but I promise you, if you use that formula, it's super easy. Highlights, lowlights, insights, 3 things base in terms of what we should be covering in those one-on-ones. When you start getting into dashboard territory, and what I mean by that is anything that can be reportable, anything that can be put on a spreadsheet, anything that can be loaded up into a system or some kind of BI analytics tool, don't waste your precious one-on-one time with that stuff. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that stuff is not important. It absolutely is. It's where you get your operational insights into whether the business is running as it should and whether the person and maybe their team are doing what they should be doing. But you can look at that stuff in your own time. And you can then follow up with a question on highlights or lowlights, for example. Yeah, I did see that. I did see an increase in this or a drop in that. Yeah, I'm curious. Can you tell me a little bit more about, what's driving that? You will have your own insights about that, but you want to make it a conversation. You want to hear from them in relation to that. I would not be poring over some kind of reportable sheet. Don't do it. It's a waste of precious one-on-one time. Anything that can be reportable, the team should all be jumping in. It should be visible and transparent to everybody in the team, and they should be able to go in and analyze it and celebrate successes and critique where things are not going so well in obviously a psychologically safe way. Right, but everyone can be doing that in their own time. And you've probably got a team meeting also. So remember, connection is going to be about dedicating time to that person, highlights, lowlights, and insights. That will give you good quality of connection. And if you're doing it frequently enough, which as the research tells us every week, then you're going to be getting good quantity too. That quality and quantity balance is super, super important to manage and maintain the trust in the relationship. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't have connection if I don't have trust. And I don't think I'm odd or unique in that sense. I think for most people, their trust level, trust credits as I like to call them, are going to be determined by what the quality of that connection looks like. So if we've got a good quality connection, if I know you've got my back, I've got yours, we have a good solid foundation, we have good solid trust, then I'm going to want to connect with you. I'm going to want to share my lowlights as well as my highlights. I'm not going to keep stuff from you because I know that you provide a safe space where I can come and chat to you about whatever I need to chat to you about. All right, so that's critically important. So connection, we're going to be focused on quality. We're going to be focused on frequency of connection or quantity of time. We're going to be focused on building that trust. Always, 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 always building that trust. And a framework that you can use for those one-on-ones is highlights, lowlights, insights. 30 minutes per week, tops. Get it down lower if you can. Put reportable data in a dashboard. Do not let it go anywhere near a one-on-one. Okay, that's on connection. Oh, and I should add to connection, social capital discussion. The chit chat, and if you've ever done a Clarity 4D profile with me, and if you are high in yellow energy, this is super important to you, right? You're building relationships based on the social capital, what we know about each other. But for some people, they find this a complete waste of time and quite trivial. And they're like, why do I need to bother doing that? But the fact is that if you want to build a good quality connection with people, you are going to need to engage in some level of social capital chat. Gee, how was your child's hockey game on the weekend? Or how was your bike ride? I know that you mentioned that you were going out on a big ride. How's that new gym that you've been talking about? Did you end up cooking that lasagna that you were going to cook? I don't know, right? Obviously, I'm making things up. But that social capital, it doesn't need to be 20 or 30 minutes, just one or two little questions which demonstrate that you heard them last time you spoke to them and that they heard you, hopefully, and that you care. Now, I'm very well aware some of you might be going, but I don't care. I really don't care about their kids' hockey game or their lasagna or their bike ride. And I am saying to you, please care. Right. It is really hard to lead when you don't care. And if you don't care, go and get a team of bots and AI things to do the work. Like, don't get humans, right? If you're going to have humans doing the work, please demonstrate care, because it helps to build trust. And you know what? It's kind. And the world needs kindness. It actually needs more kindness, more than ever before. So please treat your humans kindly and just demonstrate that care to them. That social capital is really, really important to establishing and continuing to maintain that connection. I can't emphasize that enough. All right, now we're on to empathy. So connection is part of it. Empathy is, this is not necessarily linear. So what I want to do with you today is just be talking to, about different elements that help to manage performance in your team. Empathy is another big one. So empathy, I really like the work that the Potential Project have done on empathy, because in their work, they look at what's the difference between pity, sympathy, empathy, and compassion. And those four things are not all the same, right? Even though we can confuse them. The other thing they look at, though, is that as we graduate from pity all the way through to compassion, so we've got pity, sympathy, empathy, and then compassion, it's dependent on two key factors. One is our understanding of the other person's situation. You don't need to have been in their position, or you don't need to have gone through what they're going through to have empathy for them, but you do need to have an understanding. Our understanding, of course, is always assisted when we've been through what they've been through, but that's not always going to be the case. And if that's not always the case, so for example, if they've lost a parent and you haven't, that's okay. It's not to say that we can't still demonstrate our understanding, because we've probably all lost something or someone at some point, right? So we can still demonstrate an understanding, even though we might not have exactly the shared experience that they have had. Secondly, the other factor is that we need to have a willingness to act. We need to have a willingness to do something, not just admire the problem. We need to be willing to jump in and do something. So if we are offering our support, so if we say, how can I best support you? Then we need to be genuine in that offer. They might come back and ask us something that we cannot do, right? And that's okay, as long as we've got a good reason as to why we can't do that thing. And it could be that it's, against company policy, or not within, the bounds of our budgets, or setting a precedent that we don't want to have to set within our business. I think as long as we're explaining it, it's okay. But we do have to have a willingness to do something. And that something could be listening to them. It could be something else. It could be providing them with some additional time, or it could be looking at restructuring something, an aspect of their job. It could be that we're working with them to change an aspect of something, right? But we need to be able to roll up the sleeves and get in there and be willing to assist. Community service announcement, that does not mean take it over. It does not mean get in there, make decisions for them, do what you think is in their best interest without consulting them. That is unsupportive, right? Completely unsupportive. So we want to make sure that we are leaving the steering wheel in their hands, that we're a really good co-driver, that we're saying to them, hey, I'm here to support, but I'm not going to take it over for you and do it for you. So with empathy, we need to have these two things: an understanding of the person's situation and a willingness to support them. And when we're trying to be empathetic and trying to increase our empathy, there's a really great tool that we can use, which is called the empathy map. And if you pop onto the deliberateleader.net and you search the empathy map, you'll see we've got a little tutorial there for you, and we've got a template for you to use and to work with the empathy map. Many of you that have done Leader as Coach will have gone through the empathy mapping process with me. So it won't be too foreign for you if you have done that before. But in the empathy map, we want to ask 4 key questions. We want to ask, what are they saying in relation to the issue? So if we're managing an underperformer, we want to know, what are they saying in relation to the issue? What are they saying to others? What are they saying to us? Maybe they feel that the targets we're setting are unfair. Maybe they're telling others that they feel the treatment is unfair. So we want to know what they're saying. We also want to know what they're doing. So are they slacking off? And that's the reason why they're not meeting their targets, or, from what we can see, of course, from our perspective. Are they struggling because maybe there's something new and they don't understand it? What are they doing? So we're capturing those 2 things. What are they saying and what are they doing? Then we're also going to capture, and these 2 questions are a lot harder to answer, we're going to capture what we think they are thinking about that issue and what we think they're feeling. So in what they're thinking, we might be capturing, that they may be thinking that the team's going to be restructured because they're underperforming, and that's what they have seen happen in the past to others. What they may be feeling is undervalued. Maybe they also feel that we're not hearing them. The importance of you asking those 4 questions without the person present with you is that you want to get a sense of what you know, or what you think you know, in relation to this issue and what you need to have more empathy for. Then you're going to flip over to a new page and you're going to write out a bunch of questions that you could ask that person to help you fill the gaps in your knowledge about what you think you know. So if we are worried that they might feel undervalued, or that their jobs, there's a threat to their job, that they're underperforming, whatever it might be, we're going to ask a bunch of questions. Well, we're going to think of a bunch of questions and then potentially ask those questions of the person. So we could say, look, we know that the last 3 months has been tough from a results perspective, and I just wanted to check in with you around how you're feeling. If you have not very much connection or not very much trust with them, they're probably not going to tell you. So be prepared for that. And these questions also serve for you to hold a bit of a mirror up and go, well, what is the quality of this relationship looking like? These questions that you come up with off the back of your empathy map exercise, you're going to kind of sprinkle them into your next few conversations. You're not going to turn up with 12 questions. Oh, I've been doing this empathy map exercise, and I've got a bunch of questions I'm going to ask you. You are not going to do that. You're just going to sprinkle a few of these questions, maybe 1 or 2 of them, into your next few catch-ups with them. And sprinkling them means that you're hopefully able to then go back, check out all the gaps that you've got in your empathy map and plug the holes in those gaps so you can get some better quality data on what's happening. Empathy is a important aspect of you managing performance in your team, because I think without empathy, you could either go too hard or too soft, and you're probably going to be criticised for both of those approaches. So in order to keep you just right, Goldilocks and the porridge just right, we're going to need to demonstrate empathy. We need to be able to see the situation from that person's perspective to the best of our ability. We're not always going to be able to do that because we are not that person, but we've got tools that can help us, like the empathy map and like good quality relationships, good trust, and that's going to give us the insights that we need. All right, so that's empathy. Now I want to move on to goal setting. Goal setting. In the good old performance appraisal, we've got our KPIs, and then we've got some goals, some development goals, maybe some stretch goals that we set with the person. And yes, they're always very smart. We are always told, our colleagues tell us they've got these smart goals, which they do, right? They've got it. Today, we had my quarterly catch up with my team. We wrapped up Q2 and we had a goal in there which was not achievable. And it had been there for the last 2 quarters. And I looked at the data and I went, what do you reckon it should be? And we shaved it significantly. And we all went, yeah, that's better. Like, why would we have a goal in there we've already seen for 2 quarters it's not achievable? Let's change the goal, right? So we need to make sure that those goals are SMART. So specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound for those of you that are not familiar with the SMART acronym. With goal setting, you want to have a nice balance of short, medium, and long-term horizon goals. Here's the golden rule with goal setting. They set, you facilitate. They set the goals. You will obviously have something to say with the goals, clearly. Like they could set a really low goal or a really high goal. You're going to give them some guidance, right? You also need to facilitate the development and support that comes with them trying to achieve that goal. And that's important. So I like an approach of they set it, you contribute, maybe you rejig if you need to, but you are in the role of facilitating that. So whatever support they need, whatever training they need, whatever it might be. So goal setting, remember, short, medium, and long-term horizons. Think about stretch goals. I think stretch goals are great, but I think if we look at goal setting and then capability development, you know, and often we do this with our high potentials and our high performers, we throw them a really like kind of badass kind of goal, right? Like something really out there. And then we go, yeah, good luck with that. And we kind of handball because they're fantastic, they're high potentials. And we go, well, you're smart, you'll work it out. You know, you've proven yourself. And then we get into this sink or swim territory and we haven't thrown them, you know, a floaty or something that they may need to support. And I think, you know, really be thinking about even your high potentials and what support they may need. You don't want to patronize them, but you also want to make sure that you are still scaffolding and providing a level of support. Think about it like swim lanes, and this is often the analogy I use. You know, are they you know, maybe they're slow on, you know, they need to be in the slow lane for breaststroke because they're your freestyler or your backstroke swimmer. You know, maybe they're good at all things and they can kind of sit in the medium lane. Maybe you want to stretch them into their freestyle because they've kind of clocked up some great performance and some great results. And so you want to stretch them even further. And for that, you might put them in the fast lane, but still you're watching how they're performing. And I don't mean watching as in scrutinizing and micromanaging, but you're interested. You're not just going to leave them to go, see ya, good luck, swim across the channel or whatever it is, right? You're not going to leave them to do that. You are going to still be able to provide that scaffolding and support, not just able, but also doing that. So goal setting, really make sure you've got those short, medium, and long-term goals. Be thinking about what you can facilitate for them and how you can facilitate the achievement of those goals with them. It's a partnership. In capability development, even for your strongest performers, you know, really be thinking about what support do they need. For your lower and your, you know, medium performers, again, you're thinking about what support they need and you are adapting the support they need based on their growth and where they're at. You know, they might be a high performer in some areas, but not in all. So you're not going to have a hands-off cruise control approach on everything. You're going to adapt it. And this is where the situational leadership model, which is an oldie but a goodie, is so handy because with the one person in the one conversation, you can go from being very hands-on directing, but then delegating, you know, if it's something else that they may have mastered in their role. So really be thinking about what they need from you. Ask them, don't just presuppose, but really, you know, what do you need from me? How can I best support you? And make sure that you're setting goals that are appropriate for the level that they're at. The other thing you want to be thinking about is feedback. So a big part of performance is letting the person know how they're doing. And again, we started this conversation by saying we're not just managing, you know, at mid-year and end of year appraisal time or when there's a special date circled on the calendar that tells us we need to be doing these things. Your feedback to them and hopefully their feedback to you should resemble an infinity loop, right? So it's happening all the time. There is a duality to it. It's not just coming one way, it's coming both ways. You are feeding off each other. They are letting you know how they're going. You are letting them know how they're going and vice versa, right? So the frequency that you want to maintain with feedback is 2 to 1. And the research is telling us that 2 good pieces of feedback to every one piece of not so great feedback. Maybe feedback that's more critical, or, you know, where you're giving them some advice or some support with something. Now, it's kind of unfair that we label it bad. It's not bad. It's highlighting a blind spot or a development area. But we want to make sure that we've got the balance of two great things. So really recognizing their strengths. So these are, you know, this is what you're excellent in, what you're doing really well in. Here's a development area. Now, you don't need to do that in every single conversation. And you don't want to be doing a cadence of 2 to 1 where they are expecting that, like, oh, yeah, they have taught me 2 great things or told me 2 great things, and now here comes the 1 negative thing. This 2 to 1 ratio is something that you want to be applying all the time. It's probably a ratio you want to make sure you are monitoring for yourself. So am I demonstrating an awareness and an understanding and a recognition of the positive things, double the amount of times I'm picking up something that I need to be critical of or highlight as a development area? Right, you want to be doing that 2 to 1. Now, the sandwich method still gets talked about today, 2025, and we're still talking about the sandwich method. And I don't want to be overly critical of those of you that are using it. I think it had its time and place. The issue with the sandwich method is that we all know what's coming, and it impacts trust. For those of you that are not familiar with the sandwich method, we give some good feedback coupled with some crap feedback in the middle, and then we finish it up with some good feedback. And that is like going into a restaurant, having a nice entree, a crappy main meal, and then a really nice dessert. Now, you're not going to give that kind of restaurant a 5-star Google review upon leaving it, are you? Because the main meal didn't match up for a 5-star Google review. You're going to want the whole thing to be wonderful. Not just the food, but the service, the environment, the ambience, all of it, the experience, right? So when you're thinking about feedback, and this is actually good. If you were to think about your feedback and go, well, what would be the Google review that I would get based on the feedback I've just given? Do that. That could be your litmus test, right? If you want a 5-star Google review, what does that look like versus a 2 or 3-star Google review? A 5-star Google review is going to look like frequent feedback where you are celebrating strengths, double the amount of times that you are finding something to be critical about. It's coming regularly. It's part of the way that you work. It's part of the culture. It's part of the dynamic of that team and of your relationship with that person. And they give you as much feedback as what you give them. That's a 5-star Google review feedback rating. A 2-star Google review feedback rating, or a 3, right, but pretty average, mediocre, is going to look like, oh, well, it's 30th of June, so we've got to do our mid-year appraisal. We should book that in. Can you send me your feedback and I'll send you mine, and then we'll come together and have a conversation. That's a pretty stock standard approach. But have you had any conversations throughout the course of the year? Does the person know what they're walking into? Do they know what sentiment you have about their performance? If the answer to that is no, then you're looking at a 1, 2, or you won't even get a 3-star Google review rating on feedback. It'll be 1 or 2. You want to be in the 5 category. All right, that's where you want to be. So we want our feedback, we want that 2 to 1 ratio. We don't just want it to be bad feedback. Nobody likes a smarty pants. Just because you're the leader, like, go you, if you can pick out all the critical stuff and highlight all the gaps, great. That's actually not the most difficult thing to do. Most people can do that. But being able to celebrate successes, being able to reward great performance, being able to celebrate strengths, being able to leverage those strengths and use those to motivate, that is much more challenging. And that's what we want you to be doing as a deliberate leader. All right, that's on feedback. And now, finally, I want to finish with decisions. When you are managing performance, which you're doing through the course of every single day, not just at certain times with circled dates on the calendar, there will be times where you need to make decisions. And those decisions might look like changing someone's role. It might look like promotions. It might look like conversations that you'd really rather not have because they make you feel awkward or bad or whatever it is. and you're worried about how it's going to land on that person. Decisions will often need to be made. Don't rush the decision. Really super important. Make sure you've considered it properly, but at the same time, don't leave it too long. When you leave a decision that is to do with someone's performance too long, you are leaving them in purgatory, no man's land, ambiguity land, right? You're leaving them in a place of grayness where they don't know whether they're going forwards or backwards. It starts to impact their engagement. They go into the territory. What am I doing here? It becomes much harder to manage them from that place, right, than when they've still got some energy around them in terms of, what could I be doing differently, better? How can you support me? So if you need to make a decision, make the decision. Don't make it too hastily, but equally don't leave it too long, right? You want to make a decision. When you've made a decision, communicate it. And that way the person is not sitting in purgatory and no man's land. They know where they are. And you know where you are too. And the rest of the team know where they are. So we have covered a lot in performance, right? We've covered connection. We've covered empathy. We've covered goal setting and capability development. We've covered feedback, right? And then we've covered decision making. It's not an exhaustive list, but I reckon that those 5 key elements will really have you focused on performance. It is a big, big part of the Deliberate Leader portfolio, the Deliberate Leader, if you choose to take on, what deliberate leadership means and embody it. Performance is absolutely one aspect. All the things we talk about in deliberate leadership, empathy, compassion, kindness, communication, working styles, it is not soft. We're doing it to drive better performance. And it doesn't matter what type of business you're in. And if driving performance is not language that matches your business because, I don't know, you're a particular type of business where that language doesn't resonate or suit, and I don't want to presuppose what that is, because I would be generalizing and stereotyping, but sub it in for whatever the language is more appropriate for you. But we are doing this to drive better outcomes, better KPIs, better results, whatever the language is for you, but we're doing it for that. And it's a critical, critical part of running deliberate organizations, but also you being a deliberate leader. If you are embarking on performance conversations anytime soon, best wishes. But it's kind of a non-event because you're going to be doing this all the time if you have been practicing what we've been talking about here at the Deliberate Leader. Best wishes to you all, and I will see you very soon on the next episode of the Deliberate Leader podcast. We have just recorded the final episode of the Deliberate Leader for this installment that we've been running over the last 3 weeks. So we have been looking at energy, we've been looking at relationships, and we've been looking at performance, and we've just finished the section on performance. This is one not to miss, particularly if you're a completer finisher and you're like, well, I've listened to the other 2. What's the third one? Tell me. This third one was all about performance. And so we really, really dived into, in great depth, connection, empathy, goal setting, capability development, and feedback, along with, and we finished on decision making. So it's an opportune time if you are thinking about performance appraisals, performance development. You're going to make them a non-event because they're happening all the time, hopefully. But this is one not to miss if you are interested in how you can do a better job of elevating performance for you, but also for those in your team. See you soon.